Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome to those of you who are following us here on the Zoom webinar, and welcome, of course, to those of you who are following us on social media. This is the California Portuguese-American Coalition. CPAC is a statewide organization with 11 board members all the way from Marin County to San Diego. What you are seeing on the screen is a picture of the California State Assembly, California Capitol, I should say, Assembly and Senate. And we will be having some other guests join us. And thank you for all of you who are already joining us. We are to start around 9 o'clock, but we're already broadcasting this, of course, on Facebook Live. And this is going to be recorded, and also it will be archived as part of the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute Portuguese-American Oral History Project at Fresno State. With us here is Cliff Costa, and Cliff is a board member for the California Portuguese-American Coalition, and he's been instrumental in getting this moved into the floor of the Assembly and the Senate. Sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world, especially for those people who are not totally there and don't understand the system, like some of us, including myself. And so we want to thank Cliff, first of all, for joining us this morning. He's a busy guy, and also for going to guide us kind of in a way of what's going to happen. Hopefully we will transition shortly from this excuse me, from this image that we were seeing to an image that will be inside the assembly floor. And so, Cliff, welcome, first of all. Thank you.
Good morning, Diniz. Thank you. Happy to be here. Happy to help. So what you are seeing presently is what we would call, this is the state capitol. This is actually taken from across the street, known as the Legislative Office Building, known as the LOB for us here in Sacramento. The LOB building staffs and holds a number of committee staff and other various folks who work and support various committees and operations within the Capitol. So this sits across the street and records as just sort of a, as you can see, a sort of outside view. And once the assembly actually gets called to the House, we will then see the image of the assembly floor and the operations there.
Okay. And so what is kind of and folks can see it's a live shot because you've seen a couple of birds just fly by. It's not here inside my house. They're actually there they are, right? So yep. we've just transitioned to what you just explained to us. Thanks, Cliff. We also have here on the line here with us, as on this live broadcast that's being also, by the way, it is being put forth through the, of course, all the different Facebook pages, but also it is part of the Televisão Portuguesa de Califórnia, the Portuguese television in California. João Manuel Dias is doing a live broadcast, a live stream of this as well. So welcome to everyone. We have the Consul-General of Portugal in San Francisco also with us, Maria João Lopes Cardoso. Welcome. And I think we're going to go into the assembly, right?
Assemblymember Gray notices the absence.
Yes, what they're going to do is what I just called, they're doing what's called call of the House. They ask all the members to show up on the floor. And so then they will start the process of calling the roll. And you can see people are starting to hurry to their seats as they begin, again, what we call the call of the House. So they're bringing people down, encouraging people to come. We're going to see this for a little while, and usually 5 to 7 minutes, and then they will actually go ahead and start with the actual proceedings.
And nowadays, Cliff, all of this is always live streamed, so people can have a local. I mean, through your computer, through your phone nowadays. Of course, you can follow anything that the assembly is doing, right? Pretty much.
Okay. Everything is live streamed, and in fact, because of still the COVID-19 pandemic, you see many of the assembly members and staff still wearing face masks. You see that they are still operating in a sort of distanced and remote way. In fact, if you care about a bill and see a bill presented and you want to call in and register your support or opposition for the bill, you can do that as well. That is now all available through an AT&T conference line, which did not occur before the pandemic. Prior to the pandemic, if you wanted to testify on a bill, you had to physically come down to the state capitol's committee hearing and testify in person. This pandemic and use of technology has started to change that process. And so I think one of the big questions is as we move on beyond the pandemic, hopefully, and we get back to being in person and doing the things that we all want to get back to, does that mean we continue these distance practices, like being able to just call in? I will tell you, civic engagement is up in that process. That is a very good thing, but I will tell you at the same time that comes with its negatives. You have people who are calling and threatening legislators. You hear crying babies in the background. You hear dogs barking, situations that did not normally occur during a legislative proceeding. People call in on the wrong bill and can create a little bit of chaos. But having more civic engagement, I think, is better for the legislators. It's better for democracy. Personally, that's my opinion.
Sure. I would think everybody would agree with that. I mean, there are going to be some there's going to be some things that are not as well as we'd like them to be, but hopefully, some of those can change, right?
Correct. And
as people get used to it, I think get used to it, it might change.
So I don't know if you want to scroll down a little bit more, Diniz. We're seeing the sort of top of the page.
There we go. Is that a little bit better?
Yeah, that's better.
And Consul General is on the line with us, Dr. Maria João Lopes Cardoso. Consul General, how are you this morning? And a little bit different than if we were there live. We did that a couple of years ago, last time 2019.
Can you see me?
We can see you on the side. We're yeah.
Because I'm using a different device today. So we also have an event here today at the San Francisco City Hall, but just with a few people. We could not have a reception or do something big. So something very small. So I cannot be with you all the time. But I definitely wanted to be part of this. It's wonderful to manage to have the resolutions even during COVID. Last year it wasn't possible, but now this year again, you achieved it, and that's very much thanks to Cliff, who's over there, and to you as well, and to CPAC. So we're very happy, and it's good to have it both at the Assembly, at the Senate, and both the resolutions. Yes, the Day of Portugal, the month of Portugal Heritage. So I mean, bingo, right? So we're really getting out of this crisis, and God knows what we will have next year. So let's aim higher with the Portuguese caucus in San Francisco. Or was it an Azoria one? What were your plans, Diniz?
Well, there's the caucus. The Portuguese caucus actually still exists. It's on the books. It just has not been very active. It was started by then Assemblyman, now Congressman Jim Costa. What we are working with Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguiar-Curry to revive that part, and then to create a group that would not be just of legislators. It would be also business people and everything else that have roots in the Azores, called Friends of the Azores. Because as you know, since 2002, the Azores and the state of California are what is known as sister states, although the Azores is not a state in Portugal. It's a different concept. It's called an autonomous region, but it's kind of the same idea, of a state within a nation, or a region that has its own regional government. And so in 2002, then I believe he was a assemblyman, Jim Costa. He probably was still in assembly, Cliff. I don't know if you remember.
Again?
Again, Jim,
Friend-
Jim's done it all.
always Jim.
Jim has done it all. I think he was still in the assembly. I don't think he was in the state senate yet. And he began the process, and it was approved. I think we have a copy of that original resolution that was approved as the Azores and California as sister states, kind of the same idea as the sister city program, like Hayward Faru, Tulare Angra, Santa Clara,
Yes, yes.
is with Coimbra, etc. So we do have that, but there hasn't been
Yes.
much done with it. Unfortunately, these resolutions sometimes pass,
Mhm.
and Cliff can probably tell you that even with some of the, unless it's a bill that has some teeth into it, sometimes things pass and they don't get followed up. And so, gosh, it's been 19 years since the Azores and as an autonomous region of Portugal and California as a state in the Union have become sister states, but not much has been done. So we're going to try to revive that because I think that's important for the region. The region, of course, has a strong tie, and as you know very well from your last 4 years here, has a very strong tie with the community here.
Of course, but the caucus would be nice too if you manage to motivate the Portuguese American members of the Assembly and the Senate to be a little bit more active, because we haven't heard about them as such.
No, we haven't, and the issue is every time, I think Cliff can even talk a little bit more about this, but every time it changes and we don't. When the caucus was first put forth, there were, I believe, 6 members in 4 in the Assembly and 2 in the Senate that were Portuguese. So it was a good number of 6. We unfortunately don't have those numbers now. We basically have 1 in each chamber,
Yes.
but I think that maybe Cliff can add a little bit to that. I think even with just 1 in each chamber, what we need to do is recruit people who aren't Portuguese but can be part of the Portuguese-American caucus. Maybe instead of just calling it Portuguese caucus, call it Portuguese-American caucus, and have it to where we have members who are of districts where there's a pretty good number of Portuguese Americans. I'm thinking of Adam Gray. I mean, that's a very strong Portuguese district.
Right.
I'm thinking of the legislator, and forgive me, you'll remember that Lee Neves, who was our guest yesterday, is the chief of staff. I mean, that's in Stockton, Manteca. That's a pretty big Portuguese American. When this started, Madam Consul General, we had a powerhouse in state politics at that time called John Vasconcelos. John Vasconcelos was kind of a powerhouse in both parties. He was a Democrat, but he controlled a lot of things in both parties. Had a lot of certainly a very powerful member in the Democratic Party, and had a lot of respect in the Republican Party as well. And so he kind of could get a lot of things done. So, Cliff, what you can have maybe a little bit to that. I mean, a caucus only makes sense if it has more than 1 member, obviously, and if we can convince the other members.
Yeah, 100% agree, Diniz. When the caucus was roaring, we had membership in the legislature, as you just described. When people move on, and because of term limits, we have a constant sort of change in membership of the legislature. It's a little bit more stable now that term limits have been sort of extended to 12-year terms versus the previous 6 years in the Assembly and 8 years in the Senate, for a total of 14. So they get a little less time now, 12 years, but they can stay in the Assembly or stay in the Senate. You didn't see as much sort of house jumping or them really looking for their next job. But that's relevant for us because now that we have more of a stable core of members, we would love to grow and have more people who are of Portuguese descent to get elected. But if we can't, then looking at areas like San Diego and San Jose and Stockton and the Central Valley and other places, we definitely could do that. Every time we start to get this ball rolling, though, there's either some sort of change. And the last change, as we were getting the ball rolling, COVID happened, and that stopped everything. We were marching towards getting the caucus really revitalized and setting up the 501c3 on the side. I think it was a 501c3, maybe it was a 501c4, Diniz, I can't remember. But we were looking to set that up and had a process put in place and was ready to go, and COVID changed that, and priorities changed for some of these legislators. Right now they're trying to get PPE and small business grants, and other things are the focus of trying to recover from this pandemic. And so then the question becomes, how can we now get focus again on the caucus? And I will tell you, speaking with the Assemblywoman Cecilia Aguiar-Curry, she's very committed to doing that, but getting the Speaker of the Assembly to acknowledge that, to formally recognize it, to revitalize it, it takes steps and takes political maneuvers. And so if we could expand our group, that would be best, or if we can expand and include friends or people who represent large Portuguese communities, that would also be good.
Indeed, yeah.
Members,
Are we about ready to start here?
quorum is present. We ask
So she's now saying,
member-
now that enough members have come to the floor, and as I said, it usually takes them 7 to 10 minutes to come. They are at 9:14 here. They've all made it to the floor, not everyone, but most of them, enough for them to call a quorum. So now they're going to start it. She started the meeting, and now what they do is they start with an opening prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. So maybe we want to listen to the prayer here for
We
a second.
sure do. Here we go.
May the Holy One of Blessing grant us inner strength and enduring optimism, so that we may continue to find joy in our daily labor, with the worry and concern for the people. We ask you, O God, that you use us to make this world a better place. May this be God's will. Amen.
Thank you, Imam Yasir Khan. We ask our guests and visitors to remain standing and join us for the flag salute. Please join Assemblymember Carrillo as she leads us in the pledge.
Put your right hand over your heart. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. You may be seated. Moving to the reading of the previous day's journal.
Assembly Chamber, Sacramento, Tuesday,
Ms.
May.
Reyes moves and Mr. Flores seconds that the reading of the
Now
previous
they're going to
day's
start the
journal be
business here,
dispensed with.
Diniz. They do
Presentations
what,
of petitions, there are none. Introductions and reference of bills will be deferred.
so they're starting to do the process of the House. Heard them say reading of the journal. The journal is essentially, if you participate in any sort of formal meeting, you read the minutes from the previous meeting, but they, as you heard, they quickly waived that reading. They do that almost every single day, just like they do the pledge and the prayer every day. You're seeing the majority leader, Eloise Reyes from San Bernardino, a friend of mine and a friend of the lobbying firm I work for. She is a Democrat, a former applicant attorney in her private practice, a very, very wonderful and thoughtful woman. She's standing up, and I can't hear what she's saying, but for the most part, she is letting the floor know what types of motions and resolutions they're going to proceed with. They're going to talk about and go through this process of working the file. What we mean by the file is every bill item has a file item number. So if you're AB7, you would have a file item number, and it's done in that order, sort of in terms of priority order for the file, not necessarily in bill number order. They're doing what they call the second reading. The second reading is what we would say sort of a holdover from the
on file.
traditional days of California politics, and that is when literally there was no public technology, nothing else. You saw people would have to come to the Capitol to read the bills and to hear what the bills were about. The second reading was part of that process. It required that the bill be read 3 times before the House can actually approve the bill off the Assembly floor. So when the bill is first introduced, it's considered read the first time. Then typically on the first day a bill is on the floor, it will read the second time. So that was the second reading you just heard, and then they would proceed to third reading. What you're seeing now is Assemblymember Jim Cooper, a Democrat from Elk Grove, who is standing up and doing a resolution, what's known as an AJR, an Assembly Joint Resolution. This a joint resolution is format in which the California legislature is letting Congress know, and they speak from both the Assembly and the Senate, and they let Congress and the President know about taking a position on a particular item. And so what Mr. Cooper is standing up and presenting on is an item related to Social Security. And so he's now presented the resolution, and they'll see here if there's any debate or questions. And that's what the Assemblywoman and who is presiding over today, her name is Rebecca Bauer-Cahan. And so she asked.
So what are we seeing here with all these little green things popping up now?
This is not a vote. You'll see there says Assembly third reading co-authors. These are people who have agreed to sign on to the resolution. And so then they if they want to sign on, they push the green button on their desk. That indicates to the clerk of the Assembly that they would like to be a co-author on the particular piece of legislation. She's now asking for a vote on the actual bill. And so you will see the people who are voting in support. Some of them actually did co-author the bill and some didn't, but they are voting in support of the bill. In terms of our resolution, because we are not telling Congress anything, we do not actually take a vote like this. We would do an oral vote where members of the Assembly would just say aye or nay.
I see.
So that's the difference, which you'll see here when the Assemblywoman presents our resolution.
For purposes of amendments, the clerk will read.
And so she is, this Assemblywoman is kind of the acting speaker for today, correct?
Correct. She's known as the Speaker Pro Tem. What her job is to do is to preside over the House and make sure that the House is operations are running. And so she identifies people who need to speak. She makes, she conducts the meeting, really, is what she's doing. And so
who is for those who are from out of state and following us, people following us in the Azores, in Madeira, in mainland Portugal, because of course of the resolution coming up real quick here. Who is the speaker now?
The speaker now is Anthony Rendon, who is a legislator from LA County, an area known as Lakewood in LA County. He has been speaker for the last 5-6 years. He is a wonderful man who is very thoughtful, very progressive, very very, in terms of his leadership, is to very much give power and influence to his deputies or his lieutenants, depending on how you want to call them. He gives a tremendous discretion to committee chairs so that the committees can operate and makes the decision. And Diniz, now here we go. We're going to go to our resolution. And so
there we go.
You are recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Today is Portugal Day, and I am proud to present ACR 59, which commemorates June 2021 as Portuguese Heritage Month, Portugal Day, and the recently commemorated Day of the Azores. Californians of Portuguese ancestry have made significant contributions in all sectors of public and private life in our great state. ACR 59 reviews some of these accomplishments, but also looks to bring together Californians of Portuguese ancestry mostly from the Azores, where my own family has roots, in order to build a better future for all Californians. At the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute at Fresno State, for example, they have created a grassroots community-based strategic plan for the teaching of Portuguese language and cultures in California, the only state in the country with such a plan. And I want to shout out to Diniz Borges for running that beautiful program. As we look to get beyond this pandemic, the local Portuguese-American community and our public universities, along with strong partnerships with foundations such as FLAD in Lisbon, the government of the Azores and others are encouraging students to once again engage in important exchange programs to share ideas, technologies, and economic development. The bonds that the California Portuguese ancestry have built with other ethnic communities are of the utmost importance for the future of California. This resolution honors the contributions of a community that has been and will continue to be an intricate part of our state, a community that has fully integrated while maintaining their cultural traditions. Please join me in supporting ACR 59, recognizing June 1st as Azores Day, today, June 10th, as Portugal Day, and the entire month of June as Portuguese Heritage Month. I respectfully ask for your aye vote and ask for the first roll to be open for co-authors.
Thank you, Ms. Aguiar-Curry. Mr. Villapudua, you are recognized on the matter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Today I rise in honor of Dia de Portugal, home of the greatest soccer player of all time, Cristiano Ronaldo, home of the best island of the planet, Tersua Dua. For those who are wondering why my very Portugal Chief of Staff wrote these talking points, seriously though, the 13th Assembly District has the richest history of Portuguese Americans from the Far East of Thornton and Tracy that serve Portuguese soggy bread. I mean, we have a humongous population in our district. A lot of them are dairy farmers in our district, and I just wanted to join my colleague in celebrating this resolution. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Villapudua. Dr. Quirk, you are recognized.
I just wanted to thank the member from Winters for bringing this forward. Hayward has a long tradition of people who have settled there from the Portuguese Azores, one of whom, the father of Assemblymember Dutra, who served here not too long ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Quirk. Seeing and hearing no further debate on the matter, Ms. Aguiar-Curry, would you like to close?
Simply ask for your aye vote. Thank you so much, members.
Would you like the first roll to be open for co-authors?
Yes, please.
The clerk will open the roll for co-authors. All members vote who desire to vote. All members vote who desire to vote. Clerk will close the roll and tally the vote. There are 73 co-authors on the resolution. Without objection, we will take a voice vote on this resolution. All in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The resolution is adopted. We will pass and retain on file items 8 through 10.
And Denise, that's it.
Now move to
Resolution has been approved.
file
You
item
saw we had a number of co-authors added. You may
calendar.
remark that even the Assemblywoman Aguiar-Curry signed up as a co-author. That is something they always do. If it's your own resolution, you push the green button, because part of the idea is if you push the green button, your neighbors next to you will push the green button. So that is something that you see done. And like that, we are done. A couple things I wanted to point out. You mentioned the Assembly member from Stockton. You saw him stand up. That's our friend and colleague, Lee Nevge. He is the Chief of Staff for Mr. Carlos Villapudua. So you saw him stand up, try to read the talking points that Lee clearly wrote for him, and he
and clearly, I don't think the assemblyman liked some of the things they couldn't pronounce.
Correct.
So
correct. I think
he may have an interesting conversation with Lee in a little bit.
I think he's going to find that funny. And then you also saw Mr. Bill Quirk from Hayward stand up and also speak. And he also mentioned a former Assembly member, John Dutra, who when the Portuguese caucus was rolling and doing well in terms of membership in the late 90s, early 2000s, Mr. Dutra was a vital member of that caucus and a vital member of the Assembly. And Mr. Dutra, in fact, for some of those folks who are interested, was one of the leaders of what we would call now the Mod Caucus. They aren't technically a caucus, but they are business-friendly Democrats who decided to band together to help business through some of the we would say some of the more progressive ideas that were pushed at the time. He became a force. He really was a force. He made a lot of friends, but he made a lot of enemies as well because of him taking a more moderate stance than what the speaker and the majority of the Democrats were. That legacy lives on today. The Mod Caucus is still a very powerful force, not as powerful as they used to be back in the days when the margins between how many Democrats were on the Assembly floor versus how many Republicans. We used to talk about Democrats only had a 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 seat advantage over Republicans. Now that is totally flipped. We have seen Democrats with a 20 member advantage. And so getting 25 or 30 Democrats to stay off a bill is very difficult to do, but it has happened. In fact, happened last week, as you probably have read in the news. If you're following what's happening in the California legislature, about a dozen bills did not move out of the Assembly last week, which was what their deadline was.
Indeed, and I know that the Consul General has, as she pointed out, other events to attend, including a flag-raising ceremony at the City Hall in San Francisco. So if you any comments on that? By the way, we through Cliff, of course, we have the access to the entire resolution. It's long, as they always are. I mean, they tout about everything that we do in the States, and so we will be posting that through the chat, and we'll be posting that the entire excuse me, the entire resolution is on a PDF, and there's actually even a you could actually Google it and get there that way as well. But the entire resolution is on PDF, and we will be putting it through the California Portuguese-American Coalition website and through all the Facebook outlets. I'll send it also out as an email attachment to the Consul General and the staff, and of course the people at my colleagues, honorary consuls, and that mailing list that includes, of course, the Conselho Consultivo, etc. So because, but for those of you listening to us and watching us on Facebook Live and here, these are long resolutions. Traditionally, I don't know if that's going to happen this year because of the way things are different, but usually there is a printed version that in the past, and hopefully starting next year, we'll have that again that comes out. And then usually the one is given to the Consul General of Portugal in San Francisco, as she has the one from 2019, and one is given to a smaller version is given to the California Portuguese-American Coalition. Our Honorable Consul General, any words? It's always nice to see the State Assembly, and it was nice to see all those green buttons going up. I do have one question I'll ask Cliff later, which is I was surprised he may not be there, but I was surprised that Assemblyman Patterson, who can be a difficult person, I can already tell you that, but who he's in a district that has a lot of Portuguese, and he didn't put his little green button on. But Assemblywoman. But anyway, we'll figure that one out why. But now the Honorable Consul General.
Yes, and this time, but last time, remember when we were there, some people even remember that they also had Portuguese roots, and they got up and mentioned that. So we could use, we perhaps could co-opt those people also to reactivate our Portuguese caucus. And I was very pleased to see how active Cecilia has become. Assemblymember Cecilia Aguiar-Curry, she's more and more active I've been here 4 years and I see how she has evolved as well. Maybe it was also the trip to the Azores that you organized. That was a very successful.
I don't know if it was that, but I think she is. I think you're right in the
She's
aspect
more
that,
active.
yeah, well, I think she is a little bit, and maybe after this, Cliff can also comment, but I think she has gotten a little bit more power, quote unquote, that's the word people don't like to use, but a little bit more status within even the state assembly, because she has been taking stands, but she's very thoughtful. She just won't take a stand just to take a stand. She's very thoughtful, looks at both sides. I mean, obviously she's of one political persuasion, one political party, but she has no problem talking to people of all political persuasions. She's very open-minded.
And what about the Senate? Will there also be a resolution at the Senate?
Let me get off mute, Madam Consul General. So the Senate will review this same resolution and will present it in the coming days. We do not and did not, because of COVID, we were not able to introduce both an Assembly and a Senate version like we have in the past. But that's just a COVID casualty. But the resolution will now that it's passed the Assembly, it will go to the Senate, where it will then be voted upon as well. Sometimes they present it, sometimes they don't. And I'm guessing they probably won't because of COVID this year.
Yes, I understand. But
on the assembly, on the bill, just at that, Madam Consul General, on the and correct me if I'm wrong, Cliff, but on the resolution itself, there's something at the bottom that says Stern on there. So there is something acknowledging that Senator Stern will move this forward, right?
Correct. He is what we call a principal co-author of the resolution. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And that's very good. Now we have a stable member of our community also in the Senate. So
now I can tell you, because you mentioned the Azores, Madam Consul General, that there was one guy there, and Cliff can attest to this because he was on the trip. There is one. Cecilia, of course, had a good, enjoyed it, and was important to see the land of her forefathers. But the emotions came from Henry Stern.
yes,
Yeah, the emotions came from Henry Stern. As you know, he is of Jewish background, and he got to go visit the Jewish cemetery in Horta, in Fayal, where his great grandparents are buried. And there was a very, very emotional moment for him, as it was when we were able to have him visit the synagogue. Not an acting synagogue, more of a museum, as you know,
yes.
in Ponta Delgada, and where he and Alexandria, his lovely wife, read a reading from the sacred texts, and it was very emotional. Even us, all of us were kind of teary-eyed there as we saw that. I mean, his movement, his attending that going on that trip, and then especially visiting a place where there's nothing there, but there's few unmarked graves, etc., as you know, but it is known as a Jewish cemetery in Horta, and where his great grandparents are buried. It was very, very, very emotional for him. And after that, he said, he told me this when we were getting on the plane. We stayed an extra day because Cliff and Cecilia and Michael and Angela Pontes had to come back because of the California Democratic Party convention. But they came back a day later, both Senator Stern and Assembly member Salas. And when we were getting on the plane, tears were in my eyes again, because he turned to me and he said, I've been a lot of different places, and I've been in a lot of places that are beautiful. These islands are beautiful. I've been in a lot of places that are beautiful as well. But this was like coming home. I feel I'm at home.
How interesting.
Yeah.
How interesting.
After he saw where his great grandparents were buried. I mean, that was just a very moving trip for him, because he knew also that his great grandparents had gone through some different times, and had to be sort of exiled in the Azores and things like that, because of all of the religious persecutions that were going on.
Yes. So genes do work, huh? Genetic does work, and it does indeed leave a mark. He recognized the Azores. How interesting.
Yeah.
How interesting.
And he spent, and by the way, before going to the Azores, he spent a week, wasn't Cliff? I think 5 days at least in Lisbon and all over Portugal. That's where he spent his honeymoon. So he got married, got on a plane the day after they got married, and they spent their honeymoon 5 days in Lisbon, and then came with a delegation to the Azores.
I know, but we all know the magic of the Azores. I live there as well, so I can't wait to take my husband. He hasn't visited, but he.
Oh, you have to take him. He'll love us.
Yes. And we made it.
Our artists always love the Azores, don't they?
I think everybody does. I think everybody does. Not all travel, but everybody does. So thank you so much, Chris, for pushing this, because I know it's you have to remind people about things, and for always being so active in Sacramento. We'll be going to Sacramento on the 29th also, because as you know, I mentioned it yesterday as well in the call, there will be a trip of legislators who will go to Portugal in October. And so we're hosting together a Toast to America with the Madeira wine on the 29th of June, and maybe you should be there as well. I'll forward the invitation. That would be nice. You probably know everybody, but it's good that you're on top of this as well, and that they know that we have CPAC.
Thank you. I would love to attend, and please send it to me, and I will make sure that it makes it on my calendar and I'm there. Yes.
I'll inform the organizers, the CEO of this CFE, who's organizing the trip, that you will come with us. I mean, it will be part of our delegation, let's say.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So next year again, and in person, I hope.
Well,
that's the hope.
I believe that everything should be going back pretty soon, right, Cliff? Yes. I think probably by September.
There's some talk. I don't want to get into the details, but there's some talk about trying to reopen the Capitol, and what does that look like? And you know, it is a public building, and so you can't really restrict it to a, you know, where you say, okay, we're at capacity, but they're going to try to do something like that to still allow for some distance. When you open up a public place like that, you're going to have people who want to come protest. You're going to have people who are unvaccinated. You're going to have people who are vaccinated, and so you're going to get a cornucopia of different people. And so I think they're trying to be cautious. They have to protect the legislators, protect the staff. They are an employer, just like many other employers are out there, and they have to protect their employees as well, which is the staff of the legislature, whether it's the people you saw on the screen, who are the clerks of the House, or the individual members, individual staffs. Like I served for about a decade before I decided to leave and start lobbying.
Okay, well, we'll see what happens. Again, thank you to the Consul General. We're going to stay here on the line because we have events starting, and we're going to use the same the same link, so people don't have to use 15 different links throughout the day. But our guest here will be. Go ahead. You were going to say something or leave?
I was just going to say goodbye.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and enjoy.
Thank you, Diniz. Bye. Thank you.
Enjoy the flag raising. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. And so we will continue, of course, with this in a little bit more conversation. Cliff, hope you have another 10 minutes or so.
I do.
Okay, so a couple of things, and first of all, it was great to see the different eyes. I don't know why Patterson. I'm still kind of bothered by that, but
he may not be there.
May not be there. We need to find that out. We'll find out.
So he may not be there. He may be in the restroom. I mean, there are. He may add on later. I mean, there's opportunities to do that.
I mean, there was not any reason for anybody to vote against this, even if there's only one Portuguese in your district, because it's just making me feel good kind of resolution but it's important for the community, because the resolution. And by the way, those of you following it, I had nothing to do. I don't know if Cliff did, but I had nothing to do with Cecilia mentioning my name in the shout outs.
I did not either.
Okay, good. Okay, good. I just we're just friends, and I think she enjoyed the trip to the Azores. We planned it as well as we could at
Well, that was the
CPAC.
first time she'd ever been, Diniz, as you know.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, who may be watching, you know, she is of Latino and Portuguese descent. Her family is originally from the Hanford, Kings County area, a little town called Layton, very close to where my grandmother used to live. And so she had these roots, and she had not really, I think, she knew about them, but she did not really, I think, had a full understanding until she came and was on the islands and saw what it meant to be from the Azores and have that link to family and culture. And I think she has, as the Consulate General mentioned, she's totally embraced it. She has taken this and said, no, this is who I am. These are the things that matter to me. And so it is incredible how she has embraced her heritage, but us as part of her community. It's just wonderful.
Indeed it is, and she's been doing some excellent work. The resolution mentioned a lot of different things, so it's long. I'll try to put it in the chat. I was trying to find it, but I can't find it. But when I find it, I'll put it in the chat somehow. The resolution was. And there's a couple of things that I think we'd like to comment, which is, first of all, it acknowledged the work of FLAD, and I think our friend Miguel Vaz, director of FLAD, is on the call with us from Lisbon. I know he is. Yes, he's one of the attendees. So kudos to Miguel Vaz, who is the director at FLAD that understands the communities. And so there was a mention to FLAD, because FLAD has been a partner with many important organizations throughout the state. There is a mention to the Portuguese heritage publications, and I think that is only it only, as I said to one of the directors yesterday when I traded emails, it only SOPEC becomes a sin, as we say in Portuguese. Doesn't make sense in English, because being a little bit late, because the Portuguese heritage publications has been doing a wonderful job in impressive list of in the dozens of books that have been published in the last 15 years or so, almost 20 years now, about the Portuguese presence in California. Thanks to them for all of their work, and they were acknowledged. The Portuguese press was acknowledged for their work, radio, television, and especially newspapers. Been around since the 1800s. We've continued to, not the Portuguese Tribune, it hasn't been around that long, but it's been a tradition. We've had a Portuguese language, or now a bilingual newspaper, since the 1800s in California, and that's been an important part to build bridges within the community. And I especially enjoyed, and I'd like to get your comment on, Cliff, I enjoyed the part where the Assemblywoman mentioned how the Portuguese-American community in California has built bridges with other communities, with other ethnicities, in order to be an important part of an important piece in building this multicultural state. I think that was really, really huge, because we can't just be by ourselves, and indeed it is important that we build bridges with our Asian American community, with the Latinx community, Latinx community. I always mix those up, but the Hispanic community, with communities, the African American community, with communities, and ethnic groups from other European countries. The Armenian community is large in California. The Greek community that our lieutenant governor is families has roots in is large. The Italian community. So I think it's very important that we build bridges, and I was wonderful to see her say that.
I concur. At the end of the day, we are all immigrants to this country, and there is a lot of opportunity for us to share our story of coming to this country, where we're from, what our culture is, what our values are. And what you start to realize is our culture and values and the things that we hold dearly aren't that different from other like communities, those communities you mentioned, Diniz. And so I think we have seen a lot of, and I think the Assemblywoman, from her own perspective of being from these two different communities herself, I think has seen that integration and collaboration and cooperation.
Indeed, indeed. And so the Assembly, of course, when do they go to recess? Is it now in June, or is it later on in the year?
So now, just to give you a little bit of the legislature sort of efforts, last week was a big deadline. They had to get all of the Assembly bills out of the Assembly. And so now all those bills go to the Senate for consideration. They will work until July 16th, and then they're going to go on a summer break for a month. For us in the lobbying community, we like that summer break. It allows us to dive deep and get into more issues, fix issues before the last month of session. They'll come back on August 16th, and they'll work all the way till September, I think it's September 10th off the top of my head. And they will just, I mean, they try to get every bill they can out of the legislature and to the governor's desk. If it doesn't happen by that September deadline, then the bill is held and it can only be considered again next year. So obviously, everyone wants to try to get their efforts through. But COVID has complicated things in the past. COVID has messed with things. This year alone, the legislature had decided that even though they could introduce as many bills as they wanted to introduce, they could only send 12 to the opposite house. And so we saw legislators who had 20 bills get to their respective floors and then try to choose 12 of their favorite children and keep in the lifeboat while putting the other 8, for example, off the lifeboat and let them proceed to not die, but at least hold for a year. So we've seen some of that effort, and we saw some frustrations as it relates, but that's still a casualty of COVID. That's what we're still experiencing in this legislative dynamic, at least this year.
Well, Cliff, besides, of course, the excitement around the Dia de Portugal resolution, Portugal Heritage Month, and the Azores being also a part of it, because we just had the Dia dos Açores, it was a good civics lesson for, I hope there were a lot of students watching, and not a lot of students, but people in general, because it was wonderful that you took us through those different steps of what happens every day. And it's wonderful to see, that the California legislature and having this mix of what we really are as multicultural people. I mean, it was wonderful to see when the different people were talking and the different shots. I mean, you had people from all walks of life. You had people from all different ethnic groups, elected in office. You saw African Americans, Asian Americans, Portuguese-Americans, Greek Americans, Hispanics, of course. And so you saw all these people that have been able to be elected to represent, of course, their constituents in general, but also those populations that sometimes have been, kind of left behind in the political world, and also to see the cleric that did the opening prayer, a very generic prayer, a very open to all religions prayer, done by because traditionally has been a Christian person, and this this cleric is Muslim, obviously. So is this an effort that the Assembly tries to do, to have the different denominations of faith present?
Yes, in fact, prior, the chaplain that was before the present chaplain was actually a Buddhist. And so he came and spoke every Monday and Thursday, or whenever session was there, to do also a very similar type prayer of providing wisdom and guidance to the elected officials to try to, keep California in a positive light, and to, have God, look down upon California in a prosperous sort of way. So you see that is an effort that occurs every time. It reminds me, not necessarily the prayer, but the Pledge of Allegiance reminds me every day of being an elementary school kid, where you would stand up every day and say the Pledge of Allegiance. When I first started
And
working,
you used to say it in high school in Portuguese. Remember
that's right.
that?
That's right. That's right.
I taught.
Those who don't know, Diniz was my teacher. So
and
yes,
we would say it in Portuguese. That was the first thing that we learned, was how to say the Pledge of Allegiance in Portuguese.
right. That's right. So that brings you back. But some people ask, well, why do they do that every day? And part of it is this is one historian, a legislative historian mentioned to me, it helps to center and to focus. Before we get to the business, which can be controversial or divisive, we need to have something that brings us together. And a prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance is that attempt. And that is why the House, both the Assembly and the Senate, has maintained that tradition and intends to continue to maintain that tradition. But to also acknowledge the diversity, as you mentioned earlier, by having other religions be the chaplain who comes in and provides the prayer, that it's not just one perspective or one viewpoint.
Well, Cliff, I don't want to take any more of your time. So thank you so much. Thanks for your work on behalf of the California Portuguese-American Coalition, CPAC, and your ties, of course, to the Portuguese community. We need to maybe get a new wave of legislators, including these, to go back to the Azores, there will be an opportunity for them to visit Portugal with this group from, I can't think his first name is Jay, I can't think of his last name, that is involved with this group. What's that?
Jay Hansen's his name.
That's it, Jay Hansen. Yes, that is involved with this very powerful group in California that is taking a group of legislators to Portugal. I think they're actually going to the original plan last year, and it was canceled, of course, because of COVID, was to go for a day to Madeira Islands, which is another way to, and we had pushed them to go to the Azores, but it was a little bit off the path for them. But maybe in the future they can consider that. And I know that sometimes people say, well, you push the Azores too much. I don't think I push the Azores too much. I push the Azores just enough because we have to also be cognizant. I mean, I love all parts of Portugal. I think like everybody who has been in different parts of Portugal, like you, who have been to mainland Portugal, you enjoyed Lisbon very much. But to 90% of the people that are of Portuguese background, and that's being conservative, to over 90% of the Portuguese folks in California, whether it was them that immigrated like myself, or like yourself, your mom, or like, many others, it was their grandparents or their great grandparents. Your mom came young, like I did, so we're almost almost born here. But people who were their grandparents or their great grandparents, and even great grandparents that immigrated, they all have ties to the Azores, and the Azores is a very special place. And so that's why we kind of are looking at that angle, because it happens to me. I was just saying yesterday in an event at the Portuguese Beyond Borders Institute, every time I do an event that has ties to the Azores, whether it be culture, whether it be gastronomy, whether it be history, whatever, we have 80 to 100 people when in-person events. When it's something that doesn't have, it's another aspect of the Portuguese culture, which is important, and we promote it. We have, 20, 25, which is already a lot, for university things, because I've been to university events, you had to at Berkeley when you were there. We've been to university events that there were 7 people present. But however, the Azores means a lot to people, and it's not being anti-mainland Portugal or anything like that. It's just being basically that region where you were born and raised, and you're from, and you have roots. Sort of like we, at least, especially me, much older than you, and for those of you who don't know, Cliff is best friends with my son, and Michael, and the other Michael. I mean, I'm a Californian. I like going all over the United States. I enjoy the United States. I enjoy other areas very much, but to me, I feel at home in California. I'm proud to be a Californian, since the age of 10. And so it's sort of the same thing. And I'm sure you feel the same way. I mean, California is home.
Right. That's exactly how I feel. And I'm proud to be Portuguese, and I'm proud to be Azorean. But I think of the Azores first when I think about being Portuguese, and then I think about the mainland. It's just because of my heritage and where my mom and my great grandparents and great grandparents on my father's side came from. And so, that's your perspective. And when that's your perspective, that's your perspective. And we all have our own perspectives as we approach things and as we deal with stuff. So that does not surprise me that that's your approach, Diniz. I think I'm very similar in that. And I would understand why others in the community would feel the same way. And but I also understand how there may be some folks who may be from the data or from the mainland who are here who say, well, hold on a second.
We're also Portuguese.
That's right. And we all are. We are.
Yeah, indeed we are. Thank you, Cliff. I know you have to go, so take care. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Good to see you all.
Nice to
Thank you.
Thank you. And we are going to continue here. We're going to bring in our next panel. Those of you hanging on here on the webinar, thank you so much. I'm actually going to end, for those following us on Facebook Live, thank you so much. We'll be back in touch with you on Facebook Live here in about 5 minutes or so. Take a break if you'd like to. And thank you for listening for the first of various hours that we'll have dedicated to Dia de Portugal. So in about 3 minutes or so, we will be back on Facebook Live with our first panel, our first discussion, our first conversation, one of several. We have one at 10, one at 12, one at 2, one at 4, and one at 7. Those are Pacific Daylight Savings Time.